The American Civil War, one of the bloodiest conflicts in history, was not only marked by fierce battles, but also by the silent, relentless killers known as diseases. In this documentary, we delve into the dark and harrowing realities of Civil War prisons and the devastating impact of diseases on both soldiers and civilians. The Civil War witnessed the establishment of a network of prisons on both sides, where captured soldiers found themselves in dreadful conditions. Andersonville, a Confederate prison in Georgia, stands out as a notorious example. It was designed for 10,000 prisoners but held over 30,000 at its peak. The lack of food, clean water, and sanitary facilities led to rampant diseases, making it a living hell. Soldiers on the battlefield faced not only bullets but also the constant threat of diseases. Camp life was a breeding ground for infections due to overcrowding, poor nutrition, and inadequate hygiene. Diseases like dysentery, typhoid, and pneumonia claimed more lives than bullets. The unrelenting misery and suffering on both sides were compounded by the presence of these invisible foes. In the midst of the Civil War, when soldiers faced not only bullets but also the ever-looming specter of infectious diseases, medical professionals worked tirelessly to confront these invisible adversaries. The medical facilities of the era, however, were ill-prepared for the massive influx of wounded and sick soldiers. Their fight against infections was a challenging one. Overwhelmed field hospitals, often little more than rudimentary tents, lacked the necessary resources for proper infection control. Sanitation practices were rudimentary at best, and the idea of germs as vectors of disease was still in its infancy. Under these dire circumstances, the risks of infection remained alarmingly high. Despite these challenges, a dedicated cadre of medical professionals did their utmost to combat infections. Surgeons and nurses, working under the most adverse conditions, tirelessly tended to the wounded and the sick. Their commitment to minimizing the spread of diseases was often a matter of life and death for many soldiers. Antiseptics, a relatively new concept during the Civil War, gained recognition for their role in reducing infection rates. Dr. Joseph Lister's pioneering work on antiseptic principles began to influence medical practice, albeit at a slow pace. As the war raged on, the use of antiseptics slowly increased, contributing to the prevention of infections and the saving of lives. Another challenge faced by medical professionals was the use of contaminated surgical instruments and clothing. The practice of sterilization was almost non-existent, and doctors often moved from one patient to the next without properly cleaning their tools. This lack of hygiene contributed to the spread of diseases, causing significant suffering among the wounded. The constant fear of diseases cast a long and foreboding shadow over the minds of soldiers on both sides of the Civil War. While the physical suffering endured by soldiers was abundantly clear, the psychological toll of living in a state of perpetual fear of infections was equally devastating. Soldiers, already exposed to the harsh realities of war, were further burdened by the ever-present dread of illness. Witnessing friends and comrades succumb to infections created a sense of hopelessness and despair. The psychological trauma resulting from these experiences left an indelible mark on those who survived the war. The knowledge that becoming ill often meant a death sentence added to the pervasive anxiety. Soldiers knew that there were no guarantees of survival, and the specter of infectious diseases was a constant reminder of the fragility of life. These psychological scars, often overshadowed by the physical wounds of war, were nonetheless profound and enduring. In addition to the fear of personal illness, soldiers also had to grapple with the notion of returning home as carriers of diseases. The stigma associated with illness was a heavy burden to bear. Soldiers who had contracted infections faced ostracization and discrimination, further compounding the mental anguish they endured. Amid the darkness and the overwhelming odds faced by both soldiers and medical professionals, stories of remarkable resilience and compassion emerged. Nurses, often unheralded and unsung heroes of the era, risked their lives to care for the wounded and combat the spread of diseases. Clara Barton, who would later go on to found the American Red Cross, played a pivotal role in providing care to the wounded on the battlefield. Her dedication to saving lives and alleviating suffering set a standard for humanitarian service. Her work in the Civil War was a precursor to the vital role the Red Cross plays in emergencies worldwide. Mary Edwards Walker, the first female contract surgeon in the U.S. Army, challenged traditional gender roles and paved the way for future generations of female medical professionals. Her remarkable contributions, including her time as a prisoner of war, demonstrated the resilience of the human spirit even in the most trying circumstances. Sally Louisa Tompkins, a Confederate nurse, achieved the unique distinction of being the only woman commissioned as an officer in the Confederate Army. Her hospital in Richmond, Virginia, achieved impressive survival rates among its patients, earning her the nickname Angel of the Confederacy. While their individual stories differ in many aspects, these medical professionals all shared the common goal of alleviating suffering during a period of profound despair. Their dedication, compassion, and innovation contributed significantly to the advancement of medical knowledge, despite the limited resources and understanding of the time. The American Civil War was not merely a battle fought with bullets and cannons. It was also a relentless war against invisible foes, the diseases that claimed countless lives. The impact of these diseases on soldiers and civilians was devastating, leaving physical and psychological scars that would endure long after the war had ended. Despite the darkness of the era, there were rays of hope. Medical professionals, often working under dire conditions, fought valiantly against the spread of infections. Their dedication, combined with emerging knowledge about antiseptics, set the stage for future advances in healthcare. The psychological scars borne by soldiers and the stigma associated with illness were sobering reminders of the high human cost of this silent war. However, in the face of overwhelming adversity, stories of remarkable resilience and compassion emerged. These tales continue to inspire us today, underscoring the enduring strength of the human spirit. The legacy of those who endured suffering and fought against diseases during the Civil War serves as a testament to the indomitable human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity.